back again, you guys. So today we're going to be going into kind of an interesting sort of topic. So as you can see here, we're going to be taking a look at not the whole thing because I just don't have time for that right now. But we're going to be taking a look at a few very specific entries from these Columbine icebergs that I just found highly odd and interesting. So if you have no idea about anything related to this topic, and if you are interested from a perspective of having done no research on this, I suggest you look into what the 11K is. It's, as it sounds, it's 11,000 documents made by Jefferson County, Colorado, about the Columbine High School massacre case. And that's where all the definitive information on this case really comes from, aside from Harrison Klebold's journals, etc. Another thing you should do is take a look at the Columbine Iceberg. It's almost 7 hours by restraining disorder. And then take a look at the Columbine Iceberg by the Snake Pit, which has a few entries that are not mentioned at all in this one that are also highly interesting and inspired me to do this video. I suggest you watch the Virginia Tech Iceberg by the Snake Pit as well. There was another Columbine Iceberg and Sandy Hook Iceberg that I was going to recommend as well because they're highly interesting, but I think that kid's channel got deleted or something because I can't find them in my watch history anymore. But, essentially, what I'm finding really interesting, just finding a few things that are highly odd about this entire case. The first entry we're going to be taking a look at is Klebold's white tablets. And this is all this website says on it. Klebold was known to be on St. John's wort, which is allegedly a natural cure-all for depression and alcohol dependency. Whether it worked or not, I guess I'd say not, because of what eventually happened with Klebold. But there were random white pills, random white tablets found in Klebold's room, and we will never know what they are because police decided not to analyze them. And the reason I find that odd and interesting is because of the theory, I believe it's in this one. Eric and Dylan are victims of MK Ultra. Now, if you don't know what MK Ultra is, essentially it is this. Now, pause if you want to read this. But what MK Ultra was, essentially they were mind control experiments. The CIA was using a number of means, mainly drugs such as LSD, magic mushroom, psilocybin, etc., to try and create what's called Manchurian candidates, also known as sleeper agents. And if you don't know what that is, just Google sleeper agents. Essentially what they wanted to do was create people who they could say a trigger word to, who would then go assassinate enemy, politicians or whoever for them, and then they could say the same trigger word to them, and it would erase all memory that they had done that, giving the CIA complete plausible deniability in case the subject was caught. Essentially, the CIA could give them all kinds of high-level militaristic training and then erase it all from their memory and then reactivate them at a moment's notice for whatever they wanted, really. And the official narrative on MK Ultra is that it ended in the early 1980s, but any any conspiracy theorist of any stock will tell you that there's no way this thing ended, especially with the amount of incidents like, say, Columbine we have in the modern world. There's just no way the CIA stopped this. What likely happened, as you can see here, it was Project Artichoke, then there was Project Bluebird and a whole bunch of other things. It kept changing names. It kept getting rebranded and passed off to different departments of the CIA, hence the name MK Ultra. MK was the department handling the project when it was called Ultra. Why I find that interesting is because drugs was a major part of MK Ultra. From my perspective, I think they have moved on to what's known as trauma-based mind control, which could also make sense in the case of Harrison Klebold, because there is the theory that the two were by police, specifically that officer. And another thing that makes this highly interesting, the whole idea of this highly interesting is, I don't think it's on this iceberg, I think it's on this one. There's a lot of speculation on whether or not they were, but the general consensus seems to be that the two boys were members of a group called the Trenchcoat Mafia. And then there's this entry right here, where essentially it is possible that the Trenchcoat Mafia had this going on. Now, if you aren't well versed in secret societies, it might not make any sense to you why people would do something like that. But it is a well-known phenomenon in Freemasonry. It is a very well-known thing in the Order of the Skull and Bones out of Yale University, which is the precursor for how most people end up members of the Bohemian Club. But there's also this entry, the theory that the Trenchcoat Mafia might be a global organization. Now, I personally don't quite think that this is the case, but let's see if it's on here. There is another entry on one of these icebergs stating that at the other high school in Littleton, Colorado, I can't remember the name of it right now, but at the other high school in Littleton, Colorado, that essentially there was a branch of the Trenchcoat Mafia out of the other high school in Littleton, Colorado, which does mean that it is a more widespread organization than just a group of guys at a single high school. There is also a well-known British branch of the Trenchcoat Mafia, which likely came first and was the inspiration for the Trenchcoat Mafia in Littleton, Colorado in the late 90s. And that's where we get into this. The Order of Nine Angels is a decentralized, esoteric, satanic neo-Nazi accelerationist network linked to violent extremism and terrorism. They have existed since the 1970s. It says that somewhere. Yes, right here. Originated in the United Kingdom, in Britain, in the 1970s. There's an American branch of the Order of Nine Angels known as the Temple of Blood. Now, the Order of Nine Angels and the Temple of Blood, through internet groups such as Murder, spelt with a V, and Cult, spelt with a V, and 764, have inarguably 100% been linked to at least two modern mass shooters, and that is Solomon Henderson, Antioch High School, this guy, interestingly enough, a black neo-Nazi, and here she is, Samantha Rupp now. Both of these people were in Discord servers run by 764, which links them by proxy to Temple of Blood and the Order of Nine Angels. Now, the Temple of Blood, there's a whole big YouTube video on it. Actually, here, let me pull that up. Not this. Let me pull that up. My playlists. There's a huge YouTube video where this guy basically proved that the Temple of Blood, right here, Kyle Spitz and the 764 files and the Joshua Sutter files. The Temple of Blood infiltrated and took over a group known as the Atomwaffen Division, which is an American neo-Nazi organization, which, fuck them. But they infiltrated and took over their activities. Joshua Sutter himself is a known and admitted FBI agent and FBI informant, meaning that the feds essentially are running these groups, at least in America. And there is a massive amount of speculation on whether or not the Order of Nine Angels is run by the British government or some other force in the United Kingdom. Now, personally, I think Order of Nine Angels has more of a connection to secret societies than, say, MI5, MI6. But that's besides the point right now. But it has been 100% confirmed that at least two modern-day school shooters, are linked to these groups, Temple of Blood, 09A, 764, etc. And another reason that's interesting is because the Splatterpunks. The Splatterpunks were these three dudes dressed eerily like Harrison Klebold, who showed up outside of Columbine High School on the day of the massacre, about an hour before the news of the shooting had actually hit radio or the news. They showed up to Columbine High School claiming that they heard about it on the radio and wanted to, quote, show up to help their friends. What that means, I don't know. I don't think they elaborated on it at all. But just look at them. This screams trenchcoat mafia to me. Trenchcoat mafia. This is what Eric is dressed like in Hitmen for Hire, to resemble trenchcoat mafia members. This is what Harrison Klebold dressed like. This is an image of them on the day, the most famous image from the massacre of them on the day. Now, this is after they took their trench coats off, so that's a little less relevant. But here's them in their trench coats. And back to the Splatterpunks. Harrison Klebold in their trench coats. Back to the Splatterpunks. There's also this entry here, Ring Around Columbine. Now, there was one Columbine student about a year before the massacre who killed his own father and then himself, all within an hour. And there's also, I'm not sure if it's on here, but there was a Subway restaurant, about a year after the massacre. There was a Subway, where 2 or 3 Columbine students were working at the time, where it's actually where Rachel Scott, the first victim to die in the massacre, where Rachel Scott was working at the time, before she died. Random people showed up at that Subway and shot 2 people who had survived the Columbine massacre. And Rachel Scott's parents essentially theorized that had she survived Columbine, she would have been killed there. They do think that she was specifically targeted, despite the fact that she was already dead. There's also this all okay. Let me loop it back around to, let's see. This entry right here. Eric and Dylan's friends knew the massacre would happen, is an entry on the iceberg. Now, there is a lot of speculation about this because of... So, on the day of the Columbine massacre, the phrase, the phrase of the day for the school that was chosen by one of Eric and Dylan's friends, Eric Vake, was... Today is not a good day to be here, and that is how most survivors of the massacre remember the phrase of the day going. According to Eric Vake, another student chose "quit your bitching" as the phrase of the day, and Eric Vake changed it today to "today isn't a good day to be here." Now, that is one hell of a coincidence. Both of those things, because Eric said to... No, not Cassie Bernal. One of the girls he shot during the massacre who survived, he said, "Quit your bitching," just after he shot her. And "today isn't a good day to be here" is obviously one hell of a coincidence to be the phrase of the day on the day of the massacre. About, I want to say a year after the Columbine massacre, Eric Vake told somebody, I can't remember who, but Eric Vake is quoted as saying that he would, quote, "finish the job." And then there's the fact that I believe it's on this iceberg. I believe it's in here somewhere. Let me find it. But there's footage, yeah, right here. There's footage the day before the massacre on April 19th, 1999, which was the original planned date of the massacre, mind you. A lot of speculation goes back to this, that they purposefully planned it to be on 4/20 because it was Hitler's birthday. That's not actually the case. They planned it to be April 19th, 1999, because that is the date of the Waco siege and of the Oklahoma City bombing. Eric and Dylan allegedly were very big fans of Timothy McVeigh. But there's footage from Columbine High School the day before the massacre of somebody super gluing the locks for a lot of the school doors shut. It's not confirmed whether it was Harrison Klebold. People speculate it wasn't. People speculate it was. But they were wearing trench coats. To my knowledge, they were in trench coats, which goes right back to the trench coat mafia. So the theory basically is that Eric and Dylan's friends knew it would happen, which is where we come to... where is this entry? I don't know if I can find it very easily again, but we'll find it. There's an entry on one of these icebergs that specifically states that... so here's one of them. Eric and Dylan planting the bombs. A lot of people say it wasn't caught on CCTV, but it 100% was. There's about 10-20 seconds of tape where if you look real closely, you can see Eric Harris planting one of the bombs, and from another angle, you can see Dylan Klebold planting his bomb. But the interesting thing is that if you read their journals of Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, Eric Harris specifically, he talks about building pipe bombs. He talks about building Molotov cocktails. He talks about all their firearms numerous times. He never once writes about building timed explosives. Not a single time does Eric talk about building timed explosives. Now, here it is. Shooters didn't build bombs. They never once wrote about building their bombs. And there's no mention from either of the guys of planting a diversionary bomb, which there was one planted on the day, but the timeline doesn't make any sense. The diversionary bomb went off about the time that the bombs in the school were meant to go off, and it did in fact keep media and police from reaching the school sooner. A lot of people talk about how the police and SWAT teams didn't enter Columbine until about 2 hours after Harris and Klebold had offed themselves, and that is a fact. That's the main thing that sets Columbine apart from every other school shooting before or since, is just how long it lasted. Harris and Klebold rampaged through the school for about 45 minutes time, shooting bullets at random stuff, tossing their explosives everywhere. The massacre in the library took place over about 7 minutes, and then they just kind of wandered around the school. They had the whole place to themselves. The whole place. And again, SWAT didn't enter the school until about 2 hours after they were done and dead. And a lot of that is because of the diversionary bomb out in a field south of Columbine went off, causing a small fire in the field, and because there were bombs in Harrison Klebold, or at least Klebold's car had a car bomb in it. But the boys do not write at all about building their bombs. So the theory behind these is that their friends helped them. Essentially, some of the Trenchcoat Mafia planted the bomb in the field to help them, and that my personal theory, is that Joe Stair helped them build the bombs, because Joe Stair is on record threatening to blow up Columbine High School at least once from people in the class of 1998. And so my theory is that, Joe Stair helped build their bombs because he didn't want to take part in the shooting itself, which, if you look into other Columbine icebergs, specifically the 6-hour one I mentioned from restraining disorder, there's actually a lot of survivors of the massacre who reported Harrison Klebold constantly shouting out Joe during the massacre. Come here, Joe, Joe, we got 3 of them in the cafeteria, Joe, Joe, Joe. They're constantly yelling out Joe, according to these specific survivors. Which, there is a lot of people who reported seeing more than 2 shooters on the day. There are a lot of survivors who recalled seeing Robert Perry as a 3rd shooter. There are a few who reported seeing a sniper on the roof. It's here. 3rd shooter. That's reported a lot. There's even a chisel-faced shooter. Apparently somebody saw a tall, blonde, square-jawed man helping them during the massacre. I can't really find too much information on this one, but there is a lot of 3rd shooter reports and theories. The police were getting calls on the day that there were up to 8 shooters, which is one of the reasons they took so long to enter the school. And then again, we have the splatterpunks. These guys showing up saying, we're here to help our friends. This is really, really eerie to me. And, if we're to go with the idea that, where was that entry? somewhere in here, Trenchcoat Mafia was a global organization. Again, I don't quite believe that, but I do believe that it is highly likely that the shooting itself was connected. Again, Order of Nine Angels, Temple of Blood. Mind you, the Discord cults that are offshoots of these groups didn't exist back in the 90s, obviously. But these did. Nobody knows quite when Temple of Blood started, but Joshua Sutter himself is about in his late 30s, mid 40s now. So if it has been around for long enough to be connected to Columbine, this all kind of starts to fit together in my mind. There it is, 8th shooter. Yeah, but Eric and Dylan's friends knew what would happen. Basically, I do think that there's just a lot of it's kind of scant in some places, but there is a lot of evidence that, the larger Trenchcoat Mafia helped Harrison Klebold with the massacre in some way. Even, what's his name? Not Scott Morrison. Chris Morris. Chris Morris was suspected as a third shooter and even arrested on the day of the massacre. And I don't know. It seems like a perfect way to deceive by calling the police yourself and saying, hey, I know who the shooters are. I thought they were my friends, etc., etc. Now, could people have helped in the massacre and escaped the school? I don't know. It was surrounded by police and SWAT and media at the time to just walk out the doors. I don't know. But we do have in recent times the Parkland massacre where... what's his name? Sorry. At the Parkland massacre, the shooter did just walk out of the school doors after he was done shooting people. He laid down his rifle, took off his plate carrier, his vest, and walked out, blended in with the students, and walked on out. So is that crazy to speculate that that same thing could have happened at Columbine? I don't know. What I do know is, in light of ideas like this, the idea that they didn't build their bombs, that the diversionary bomb was planted by somebody else, which, I mean, in my mind, the evidence for that is the fact that they never wrote about bigger bombs in their journals. And the fact that this bomb went off and the bombs in the school didn't, they completely failed to detonate. Klebold got one to partially detonate by throwing a Molotov cocktail at it. But in my mind, that's more of a malfunction than anything. That's because they had homemade napalm strapped to the outside of the bombs. In light of that fact that these ones detonated, these ones didn't, I don't think Harrison Klebold unanimously built all of the bombs. I just don't. I just don't think that's the case. In light of, the splatterpunks and all that other stuff, I think that somebody was helping them. And somebody somewhere is having a real good laugh about the idea, that these two kids got so famous for what they did that day and that no one else was caught. Now, we're going to start getting into a few more ideas that are kind of scary. I'll save this bottom tier for last. But automatic gunfire. There are a lot of reports of full auto gunfire. Now, if you don't know, in case you don't know, the weapons used by Harrison Klebold on the day were a high point 995, which is a 9mm carbine, semi-automatic. You can fire that relatively fast if you got a good trigger finger, but it only holds 10 bullets in each magazine. I don't think, no matter how fast you fired that, because of how quickly the magazine would empty, I don't think there's a chance in hell you could get that to even sound like fully automatic gunfire. If we're talking Klebold's Intratec DC-9, Tech 9, you maybe could reconcile that as what people mistook for automatic gunfire, but even then I don't know, because, I mean, if you've ever rapid fired, say an AR-15, even that doesn't sound like full auto gunfire. Nothing like it, in fact. Even with a Hellfire trigger, even with a bump stock, it really doesn't sound the same as full auto gunfire. That one's kind of an if you know, you know thing. But people reported an AK-47 on the day. Some people reported larger caliber guns, again, such as an AK-47, which is much larger a caliber than a 9mm. But there are a lot of reports of automatic gunfire. There are a lot of reports of third shooter. So, in my mind, now, only 13 people, or as far as we know, right, only 13 people died on the day of the massacre. So I find the third shooter theories, and especially the up to 8 shooter theories, kind of less likely. Simply because I feel like if it were 8 people, especially attacking the school, they would have killed more than 13 people. A lot more, just a lot more. We have, in the more modern day sense, like at Virginia Tech, Sung Hoi Cho killed 32 people, not including himself. Himself makes 33. If you know, you know on that one. At Sandy Hook, Adam Lanza got 26. The Las Vegas shooting, if you are to believe the official narrative, at least one guy got killed 60 people, 63 I think, and injured like 100 others. So I just think if there were 8 shooters at Columbine, a lot more than 13 people would have died. That's just kind of where my mind goes with that. This one, sniper didn't fire. We have no record, written or otherwise, of the SWAT team's sniper firing a single shot on the day. That this just didn't happen. And it's, if you know how police procedure, especially SWAT procedure works, they always have a sniper somewhere. That's how they got Thomas Matthew Crooks, right? Secret Service snipers and SWAT team snipers were there to protect the president on that day, etc. There's always a sniper. SWAT team always has a sniper in situations like this, even before Columbine happened. But the sniper never fired a shot. And there are plenty of times that could have happened and just didn't. For whatever reason, it just didn't. There are theories that police accidentally killed some of Harrison Klebold's alleged victims. Now that could be the reason that there's no written record of the sniper firing a shot. Maybe he fired shots and accidentally hit some innocent people, and upon finding that out, the police covered it up. Who knows? But there is no record of the SWAT sniper firing a shot. My theory is that he just didn't. My theory is that in light of this and this and this, there is no ballistic log of police suppressive fire. There is nothing in the 11K or otherwise of the police firing shots at Harrison Klebold at all. Nothing. Not from the sniper, not from the police themselves, not from SWAT. And the fact that they didn't enter the school for this is a typo. It was 2 hours, I believe. But in light of the school, the fact that they didn't enter the school until 2 hours after the shooters were dead. My theory is that they kind of just let this happen. Why? I don't know. Not to be, Alex Jones level, but this whole event was a perfect opportunity for the media to push all kinds of stupid theories. This was a perfect opportunity for plenty of different groups to jump out and push their agendas. This was the perfect opportunity for gun control to be pushed. This was the perfect opportunity. This took place not insanely long after the Satanic Panic. This was and this one did verifiably happen. This was a perfect time to push anti-homosexuality sentiment, etc. There's a lot of reasons